Hello everyone and welcome to Tuesday with Luther. The last video I did talked about how we spend our free time in Christ. How Christ has baptized us, set us aside to receive His holy things of absolution, of love, of mercy. And now we live in freedom, in love for our neighbor. The problem is though, we daily mess up at this. It's amazing how often, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, how we just completely mess up in loving our neighbor. Now we can sit there at the end of the day and go, all right, I'm going to try a lot harder tomorrow. I'm going to take the mistakes I made today and I'm going to make sure I don't make them tomorrow. And that's great, we do say that. The new man in Christ doesn't want to sin again. He wants to stop sinning. But what happens that next day when you wake up the next day, you make the same mistake again? And I do it too. Reminds me of a movie that I loved watching as a kid and love watching still today. I have my sons watch it, called The Sandlot. And every time this one boy messes up, they say, "You're killing me, Smaltz, you're killing me." And we say that to ourselves when we do stumble again, when we do sin, when we make those mistakes, when we doubt, when we're anxious, when we're stressed, when we're worried, when we hate our neighbor instead of loving him. We look in that mirror of the law and it's like, "You're killing me, Smalls. Why do I keep doing this again?" And we get that feeling in our gut, that feeling, I don't love. Does Jesus love me? I keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Is Jesus eventually going to just throw up His hands and say, "No more. I'm not going to forgive this failure again"? Those feelings can betray us. That feeling that I've failed. And that failure could not possibly be forgiven. Like everyone else in life, or even like myself, if someone fails me one too many times, or just won't listen to me, I shake off the dust and say, "I'm not wasting any more time with you." If someone has said that to you, or you've said it to someone, we get that feeling that Jesus will do the same thing to us. But that's why Luther is just so beautiful and so wonderful. Luther says this about those feelings of failure. He says, "Since Christ has abolished death and our sin and has justified us by His resurrection, why is it that we still feel sin and death within us? For sin still bites us, conscience stings us, and this same evil conscience engenders the fear of hell." How do we answer what's the issue? Luther says this, "Formerly I have often said that feeling and believing are different in kind. The nature of faith is not to feel but to let reason go, close the eyes and simply surrender to the Word, following it through life and death. But feeling does not go beyond what reason and the senses can grasp. Therefore feeling is opposed to faith, faith to feeling." If you've failed this week, it's not an if, you have failed this week. I've failed this week. We're all failures. Like Luther said on his deathbed, we are beggars, this is true. You can also say we are all failures. This is true. If we were saved by our success in loving our neighbor, our progression in loving our neighbor, our ability to love our neighbor, then none of us would be saved. We would just be really depressed, really anxious, really worried all the time. Am I saved or am I not? And Luther says that's the feeling. Relying on those feelings. Instead, hear the word of Christ that says, "I forgive you all your sin." Hear the word of Christ that says, "I will never leave you nor forsake you. Lo, I'm with you always unto the end of the age." You are baptized. You are loved. You are forgiven. We eat and drink His body and blood, and in that promise, Christ absolves us, and where we have the forgiveness of sins, we have life and salvation. So are you a failure in Christ? Yes. Am I a failure in Christ? Yes. But praise the Lord, we're in Christ. That in Him our failures are forgiven. In Him our mistakes are forgotten. In Him, He doesn't say, "You're killing me." He says, "I love you. I forgive you. Be at peace." So take heart this week. Don't rely on those feelings or the sight of good works, but instead just listen to Christ, who says, "I am with you always. I will never leave you nor forsake you." Take heart this week in those words, in that gospel promise. Peace be with all of you.